If one of you don't mind, could one of you please send the WhatsApp, the YouTube live link on the WhatsApp group? So we'll be beginning in just about a few minutes more, just 2 to 3 minutes. Hi, Karthik, could you mute yourself if you don't mind? Thank you.
Yeah, I'm just muting. Sorry about it.
No problem. All right, this is RN50. Welcome back to all. I realize that today we've got quite a bad attendance, but that's okay. Hopefully, people will tune in live or attend the lecture later today. And if not, then there's always the archive for them to watch. But welcome to the three of you who've tuned into the Zoom call. And if anyone does tune in live, and recall that last week we talked about a few topics. We introduced React. We talked about the different changes between React and web. We also um, talked about how it's asynchronous. We talked about Expo. Would anyone here like to tell me what Expo is and why we used Expo last week?
We used it to experiment with the application, right? The demo that we are trying to create.
Yeah, so we used Expo to essentially help us create our own app. So it managed a lot of the difficulties about creating an app and showing it on our phone so that we can test it. It managed all that, so we could just focus on the code. We looked at components and just a quick review question. What are the two types of components? I'll give you a hint. The first one is abbreviated as SFC. So what are the two different types of components that are present in React Native? Any of you like to guess, or if you remember from last week? So we had stateless functional components that essentially just took props. Remember, props are just like an object of arguments, and they returned some UI or something to display on the screen. And we had React.components, which essentially had the concept of state. So today we're essentially going to be looking a little more into styling, and we're also going to be looking into user input. And just as always, if you have any queries, don't forget to interrupt me. All right, so you may notice that I don't have any slides today. Well, that's because today's actually
Pranav, yes, I just had a small query.
Sure.
In previous classes, we were going through button and all those concepts, but then
Sorry, which concepts?
the basic HTML kind of elements that we used to have, view, text, button.
Yeah.
React. So, but just like web applications where we have this div, and in div we put some JavaScript code which resembles a button or a tab.
Yeah.
We do have similar options on React Native as well, right?
So essentially what's happening in React Native is that you don't have, like in web, you have your HTML files. You don't have anything like that in React Native. So you have your, you just have, you write everything in JavaScript. So it becomes much easier, therefore, to embed any JavaScript. So view is div, right? So can you try to explain what you were trying to say a little more? I didn't really understand the whole essence of your question.
Yes. In web application, we have something like native buttons and buttons designed like a button, right? Maybe with the help of JavaScript and CSS.
Right.
Similarly, on React, we have both native and the
so
custom.
We have, right. So there is just button, which essentially is the simplest, most out of the box solution that you might want to use that will, do all its styling for you. And then you've got these few things called touchable opacity that we'll be talking about a little later. We've got touchable highlight, and we've got this thing called touchable native feedback. And these are essentially, you can say like touchable components, and you can customize them to your liking. So it's essentially everything is just bare bones in those, and you can design them as you want. So you can give them the style that you want to. And even in fact, for the main button, the native button component, you can give it styles that you want.
Correct. Yes. Yeah, that's what I wanted to clarify.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you.
Good question. Other questions from last lecture while we're on it? Anyone, if you have any questions from previous lectures?
Yes, I went through the GitHub project. I know we have now migrated to another portal, but I had gone through, but I couldn't find option to install Expo.
Okay, no, it's actually not going to be on that site to install Expo. You can actually just go Google it, Expo. You can just go Google Expo download, or you can even go to expo.io, and that will let you. In fact, it's not a tool that you can install, but you have to type npm install -g expo-cli, and I know that's a mouthful of a command, but if you don't get it, then you can just go and Google it, and you should find the command. If you're still not able to get it, you can contact me after lecture, and I'll be glad to help you out.
Yeah, one last question for now.
Sure.
I had gone through the project where you had provided few code snippets. I downloaded those folders. I remember maybe in the head section, you have JavaScript, right, with the script tag.
Yeah, so you may have noticed some script tags with some weird links in them, right?
Yes. I was just wondering, where are those?
No, those are actually links that connect to CDN, which is essentially content delivery network. So it essentially lets you so they're all stored in the cloud. And those are actually
Okay.
scripts that React Web. I think you went through week one's content,
Yes.
and React, where we were learning about React Web. And essentially, those are scripts that React Web needs in order to run.
Okay. But we don't
Yeah.
need to have that in our folder, right?
No, you
When
don't.
we
No,
provide
not at
that
all.
link, it can get it automatically.
Yeah. And in fact, for React Native, you don't even need them at all because Expo
Okay.
will manage all that for you.
Got it. Thank you for now.
All right. So let's jump on to the bandwagon for today. So we're going to talk about user input. Okay. And essentially, unfortunately, in React Native, there are a few, there's essentially a less option. So you may know in the web, you have the form tag where you can take many different types of input. Input is a standalone tag on itself. Unfortunately, in React Native, you only have one component called text input. And today, just informing you that I may be looking at the docs a lot, and I would recommend you to do that as well. So if we go to a quick Google search and see what text input is, so we're going to just open up my Chrome browser here.
Yep. Text input, that is basically to enter text, right? But it has some character limitation.
Yeah, so it's essentially to enter text,
Yes.
and it has quite a few nuances, okay? So we're
Yes.
actually going to use the documentation that React Native has provided quite a bit in today's class. Whoops. So we're going to use the documentation a lot because I have to be very honest with you. React Native has so many components and they have so many props that it's not viable for anyone to remember all the props. And so what I would also recommend you guys do is there's very good documentation out there for React Native. It may not be good when you're just starting to learn, but if you use those documentation along with these lectures, because those are kind of like references, those will be quite helpful. So let's open up this link. So there's this, you can in fact do a quick Google search for text input. And we have this documentation, right? So for today's lecture, we'll be looking at an application that we'll create. In fact, this was suggested to me by a friend, Divek, who's actually here, it's himself. And I designed this in React Web, but we're going to be looking at something called an alpha position finder, which I made. So essentially, if you give it an alphabet, it will actually find its position in the English alphabet for you. So if you say F, it will tell you which position it is. So we're going to go over to my RN50 folder, and I'm going to make a directory called src3, and we'll go in there. Quick question, I think I've asked this almost every lecture, but how do you go into a directory? Through the command line. So you use the cd command, right? So we're in here, and let's create an Expo project. So Expo, actually, how would I do this? Anyone remember what the command is? It's Expo and something, and then I say the project name. All right, so it's Expo init, and we're just going to call this. Okay. So again, as I said, I have not created slides for today because if I had, a lot of them would just say look in source code. Oh, there's a new version of Expo. Well, if you find that, you can just type the same command that you use to install Expo. So we're going to go with a blank template, and we're going to leave it to do its work. So till then, let's actually talk about some web components. I'm going to open up a notepad file because this will allow me to write a few things. Let's talk about event handling, which will also be important in the context of this application. What was the main event handler that you would use in web? So if I have like a button, what would I use to attach
We
an event?
usually use on click,
So
on
I would
down,
use on click.
on click, different, yeah.
Yeah, so I would use on click, right? And in web, you could assign this on click to something like even a div or or a p tag. So you could essentially assign event handlers, as they're called, to any tag, right, in web. Now, you may be wondering, hold on, Pranav, what the hell is event handlers? In case you don't know. So would anyone here like to explain what event handlers are?
Sorry, Pranav, do you want anyone to explain it?
Yeah, so quick question in case you know.
Yeah, we have several input devices, right? We
Yeah.
have keyboard, mouse. So this basically to deal with those event handlers. Like when you say on click, you can do it with mouse and keyboard. On press is like you press and hold it. That is on down,
Yeah.
I guess. Yeah, but we have
Yeah,
different
that's
event
yeah,
handlers.
on key down and on key press.
Yes.
All right, so perfect. So that's completely right. And so essentially, to put it in shorter words, just like Karthik explained very wonderfully, event handlers are essentially certain, you can call them as like flags or like conditions. So you're saying, okay, if someone has taken a mouse and clicked on this button, do so and so, execute so and so function. If someone has pressed, say, the enter key, do something. So if you recall, in the addition game that we made, we checked, we validated the user's answer when they pressed the enter key, right? So we said something like input, and I know that that lecture was quite hard to understand, but hopefully this will be fine. We said input on key press equals, and we said a function name. So this dot and the key press, right? So we said something like that. So unfortunately, in React Native, you cannot assign an event handler to anything. So you can only assign it to a few components. What would you think would be the most basic component that you can assign an event handler to?
I remember we did assign it to button.
Yeah, so we assigned it to a button, a basic button. And we talked about a few things like touchable opacity, which is basically a much more bare bones version of a button. And we have two other things called touchable highlight, touchable without feedback, and something else called touchable native feedback, which is only available on Android. So mobile world is actually pretty limited. And there's even one more caveat. So what would you think? So say you've written a website or a web application, and say you have a list, and the content of that list is so long that it goes over the limit of the screen. What would the browser do automatically? So it would scroll, right? The list would the content would automatically become scrollable, right? So you as the programmer wouldn't have to do anything in the web, in your HTML or CSS or JavaScript, or if you're doing something in Python, you won't have to do any coding to make sure that it scrolls, right? Well, you may think that on a mobile device for a mobile app, that should be the same behavior, but unfortunately it's not. So when you're writing something in React Native, it doesn't automatically scroll. So if there's like a view, it cuts off the entire screen. It cuts off at the end of the screen. And we're also going to be talking about how to change that. So we're almost done. And while we're actually working on it, let's write this application in React, okay? Just to see what it would look like. So we would write doc type HTML, right? We wrote HTML head. I'm not going to worry about styling here. We're going to be talking about styling in a bit. So we'll give it a title, say alpha position finder. We close the head. Hopefully this should give you a better example of React. So we're going to open up, I'm going to copy those scripts now. I have a directory with a few React examples. So I'm going to copy them from our addition game that we had. Oops. Oh, it's just lagging. So we're just going to grab all the script tags. So just copy all that and we'll paste it. Now let's close the head. Open up a body tag. And then here, I'm really not worrying about indentation here, but we're going to say dev ID is app. Now the ID can be anything. This is just a convention. I'm just going to quickly save this before I lose it. So I'm going to save this as alphabets.html. So save that. Now we wrote this, right? So script type equals text/babel. Would anyone like to tell me why do we say that type attribute there? So essentially, we said that React uses something called JSX, right? And Babel just kind of transpiles it down into JavaScript. So here with the script tag, we're telling React or Babel that, hey, here, pay attention. Here's a script tag. You have to pay attention to this and transpile it. So think of it as like a dog, where everything, the head and the body, the dog would just be like blah 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 blah. Nothing. It wouldn't understand human language. But if the dog heard the word walk, it would be like blah 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 walk. It understood the word walk, and it would know what it meant. So in the same way, we're saying type equals text/Babel, and that just tells Babel, oh, okay, I have to pay attention. That's something I understand. Okay. So here we're going to define a class app. It extends React component. Why do we do that? Well, React.component is essentially uh, it, it's what helps define a React class. So we say constructor, and we give it props as an argument, and super props. Now we say super props because that's just taking everything from the super class, which is React.component. It's taking the props and it's saying, okay, these props apply to this class as well. So we say this state. Now, what do you think? So let me define our application again. It's essentially if you give it a letter or an alphabet as input, it will tell you in which position of the English alphabet it is. So if you give it F, it will tell you it's in the 6th position. So what do you think we need right now? What do you think? So we need an array of alphabets, right? And so we say alphabets equals, this is going to be annoying, but okay. I'm just writing all alphabets in the array, so I'm putting like different strings. Hopefully. Now, there are other ways of doing this, but those are essentially by retrieving content from the web, and I will talk about those in a future lecture. And this is bad code design, just saying, but we're just gonna go with it. If you're writing this, well, hopefully I didn't make anything wrong. U V W X Y Z. Okay, hopefully I've not missed anything. Right. And we're gonna, what else would we need in the state? So we just, I'll give you a hint. We need to take input from the user. What do you think we would need in the state? So we need a variable to store the
We will
user's
need
input.
yes, and the
So
text box.
yeah, so we need, so I'll say input. And since this is a JavaScript object, so it's going to be a key value pairs. Oh, made an error. I put an equal to sign. And let's close the state and the constructor. All right. So now we need to define render. What does render do? Can anyone like to tell me? So it puts some UI on the screen, right? So it shows some UI user interface on the screen. So I'm going to say render, open parentheses, close parentheses, open brace. That's a function. We're going to say return if I'm just going to say in an H1, welcome to alpha position finder. Let's define it. So this tool, given any alphabet, find its position list of English alphabets. Okay, so we have an H1 and a P. What else do you think we need in this application? What else are we going to show on the screen?
Did we have that input field?
We've not put it yet.
Okay.
So good job. So we need to show the input field. So
And
input.
maybe may or may not be required submit button.
Yeah, so we're going to have, in fact, what I'm going to do there is I'm actually going to say on key press. So if the
Okay.
user presses enter,
Yeah.
it should, go ahead. So input, I'm going to have a placeholder equals enter alphabet. We're not going to worry about error checking because that's what we're going to do when we're doing React Native. So on key press, which will basically say what should happen when some key on the keyboard is pressed. So we'll just say this dot handle key press is a conventional name. Then we say on change equals this dot update input. What does on change do? Would anyone like to guess? We've used it prior.
Yes. When we click on it, the content, new content is shown.
Kind of, yeah. But more specifically, on change will be what will happen when the text in this input field is changed. So what will happen if someone types something in here? And value equals this dot state dot input. Value is, well, value is essentially a tag that's an attribute that specifies where should the text that the user typed be stored. Okay, so we're going to actually close this. Oh, no, actually, we're going to define a button to clear the text. So we're just going to say button on click equals this dot clear input, and we're just going to get clear. So the button tag. We'll close the. I was about to write text, but well, div tag, and let's close our render function. All right, so let's render. 1 second. Let's render this on the screen. So if you remember, we said React dom.render we say app, and to specify, we have to render it where? Well, we have to render it in the div that we specified earlier with the ID of app. So we can just say document dot query selector count app. And there we go. So I'm going to close the script tag, the body tag, HTML tag. Now, I don't think this is going to work because we have not defined the functions. But let's run it and see for ourselves. Oh. Oh, something's breaking. Okay. Well. Okay, so we do need to define the functions. So let's do that. So recall that our first function was essentially, we said this dot up. Let's do update input first. Let's do the easier functions first. So I'll say update input equals event as an argument, and I'll explain this in just a second. So we'll say this dot set state. What do we want to set in the state? What do we want to change? So we're essentially handling the input here, or updating the input. We want to change our input value in our state, right? So we say input colon, and we'll just say event dot target dot value. Let's talk about what this event is. This event is essentially, it handles in any event that comes in. So, the event here is the text that's changed. And we say event.target.value is basically, we say, so event is like an object and it has a lot of things. Target is essentially that input statement that we defined in the render function. And value is the value of the input statement. Okay. So this is slightly hard, but you just have to remember that every time you're defining a function that updates some input, we have to specify the input, the event as an argument. And if you want to change the state to reflect that input, we say event.target.value. And let's hopefully run that. I'm going to just check in the console. So the console is actually, again, as I've always said, it's console's fine. Let's check in code again. Okay, so things look fine. And let's just write R. Let's handle key press. So handle key press equals. We again have to give this an event as argument. So let's write what we have to do here. Okay, so let's first evaluate what we have to do. So we have to check, okay, has the user pressed any key? And if is that key entered? So we'll say if event.key equals enter. Enter is just a constant. All right, so now I'm going to define a loop. And what we essentially have to do is, would you guess what would we check here? Would anyone want to guess what would we do in this loop? So we have to check which position the alphabet is. I'll give you a hint, this uses linear search. If anyone has ever learned what linear search is. So essentially what we have to do is, we have to, let's define this for loop. So for let I equals 0, I less than this dot state dot alphabets dot length, which will essentially get the length of the array. That's this dot state dot alphabets and I plus plus. And in this for loop, we essentially say if this dot state dot input equals this dot state dot alphabets I, because that's the value we want, right? So we'll just go and alert this. So alert, which will do what? What is your guess? What would alert do? It's a JavaScript function.
Alert sometimes is a kind of pop-up.
Yeah, so it's like a pop-up, right? That shows like a, if you've ever done any other language that like prints to the console, like Python, this is essentially like the same thing as the print function in Python, but it's more graphical. So it actually looks good other than just looking at a black and white syntax. So we're just going to say alert. Let's just print the number. So I plus 1. There we go. So we have our for loop. And just close all that. Hopefully I've done the braces correctly. And let's just finally define our clear input. So clear input is empty. And in here, we just, so this doesn't take any arguments, but we have to define a state. What would we do to clear the input? Would anyone like to guess? What would we set the state to? So we're not changing the alphabets variable. But what are we going to change? I'll give you a hint. We have an input variable in the state, which is a string. So recall that the input statement's value is this dot state dot input, right? And what does that mean? Well, it draws reference from the input variable. So to clear the input box, we can just say this dot set state input is an empty string, right? Questions about everything we've done so far. It was a huge mouthful, and I wouldn't expect you understand the first go because it's hard. Oh, something's wrong in the head. Oh, really? My bad. So something's still breaking. I'll look at. So does anyone have any questions about this? This is essentially review because this is all React. Okay, 32. Oh, remove that, hopefully. Okay, so we still have something breaking. Here's your chance. What do you think is breaking? It's an uncaught reference error, which I'll talk about. Oh, oh, it's right there. Oh, something is breaking. We can figure out what it is. So we've got, and this is a good chance for me to explain this uncaught reference error, which you might have got a lot. This essentially means you've put an extra right brace or closing brace somewhere. Oh, okay, 33. Oh, so we've got an error in this. Let's put that closing brace. Just checking. Oh, okay. Whoops. I did miss a right brace. Hopefully. Nope. So hopefully we'll get this sorted. And on the note of my terrible, terrible programming skills, let's take a quick 5-minute breather. When we come back, we're actually going to look at the result, and we're also going to look at how to write this in React Native with text input. See you guys in 5. Also, if you do have any questions, you can ask me at any time during these 5 minutes. Now what happens? All right, that was more than 5 minutes, but hopefully you guys are still following. And hopefully I have not pissed you off with my terrible skills. But we do have something that's working. So the app is supposed to look like this. Oh, oops, I forgot to. There we go. So we've got this alphabet thing. Let's say A. And all right, so we've got one. And let's test the clear input. That's clear. And there we go. So clear works as well. So does anyone have any questions on how we wrote that in React? Let me pause now. Oops. Clear a few files. Gonna close. Let's open back the code so you can take a look at it. So this is all review, and this code will be available so you can check it out. All right, so let's write this in React Native, okay? So let's go back to our directory. Go over to 3, okay. Oh. Okay, so where do we write our application in React Native? Where does most of our application go? There's a specific file. Let me give you a hint. It's related to the word app. I'm gonna stop share so you can just. All right. So essentially it goes in this app.js. So let's go and open. Yes. So we've got a lot of this stuff. We've got a few things, and we're going to change a few of this. So let's go and import. Let's import text input. We're also going to import button. That's about it. So you remember from last time, we can just write these things in like the array kind of format, and it'll just import them. So we're importing all of these from React Native. And if you want to follow along, you can do so as well. So let's change this function. Whoop. Actually, let's leave this function as it is. Let's clear. Oh. Let's just add in here a component that we're going to define just above this. So let's just call this alphabets. And in here, I'm going to define class alphabet extends react.points, right? So we're going to define a state, and this is actually a short form to define state. So we can just do state equals. So instead of writing that whole constructor code and going through all that, we can just write state equals, and we can write a state. So what did we write in the state? Well, we wanted that alphabet. So I'm just going to write that again. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, whoops, L, M, N, O, P, Q. This is the most tedious part, honestly, of writing this. S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, Z. All right, so we have this array, and we're going to say input just like last time. And we're done with our state. So we're going to close it. And I'm adding an extra close brace just in case if I forget it. So we need a render function, right? And in here, I'm going to write view style equals styles container. We're going to talk about styling in just a second here once we're done with text input. And here we need, so in the last application, we wrote a P tag and an H1 tag. What can we replace it with? We don't have headings. What can we replace a P tag with? So recall that in React Native, everything's wrapped by this text component. So we say text, what do we call this? Well, have a position finder, text, we close the text tag, and all of the React Native components are all capitalized. So in this text component, we're gonna write this to given an alphabet, position, English, alphabet. All right. So we've written that. Now we need a way. So first, let's define our button that says clear input. So button on press equals this dot clear input. Hi Karthik, welcome. So title, yeah. So we essentially I fixed the bug. Just a little recap for Karthik. I fixed the bug in the React code, and we've started with React Native, so we're running through our render function. So we're currently writing the button that says clear input.
Okay.
So we'll say clear input, and let's say I'm gonna say now this current prop accessibility label is not necessary, but it's good practice so that anyone with a screen reader can use it. And no, I'm not saying that because I use a screen reader. I feel it's just better design. So accessibility label is clear input. There we go. So we have a button. Let's review. And I missed one more thing. That's my witness. Right. So I think. Oh, 1 second. Put an extra brace there. I need to remove a curly brace. Mistake there. All right. So we've got our little component, and let's see how this renders on the screen. Now, again, this may error just because we've not defined the clear input function yet. So I'm just going to connect my phone to the laptop, and we're going to mirror my screen. Also, I'll keep talkback on for Karthik and anyone who's watching live. Oh, have it. So how do we run an Expo application? Does anyone remember from last week? There's a command that you can type. So you do Expo start, right? So Expo start. Well, okay, so that's just giving me, I have to update my Expo CLI, which I'll do in a second here. So we're getting this running, hopefully. Come on. It's going to take a second. Yeah, it does that. Let's mirror my screen here. I'm going to go over to my mirror directory. Whoops. Mirror.dat. So if anyone wants to use this mirror application, you can.
This is to display mobile screen on laptop, right?
Yeah, this is a tool. 1 second. Oh, yes, we're gonna terminate it. So this basically, if you connect in a USB cable to your phone, it will run. So oh, let's run it as administrator. Hopefully that will fix. Uh, maybe. Oh, oh, we got our Expo server. Okay, something is breaking. So it's just taking a second to mirror. Until then, I'm going to open up my Expo application. Open up Expo. Whoa. For some reason, mirror. But this has always happened with me, but all right. Okay, mirror is not working. Well, there's one more way of doing this. So if I hit W, it's going to open the project in a web browser, but it will look more like a mobile device. So this will take a second. So let's just see how this runs. And if that doesn't work, then I'm going to open the project on my phone as well, just in case. So it's running. So it's still building. Oh, it's on not the same network. Okay. So one more nuance about Expo is that both your devices, your phone and your laptop, should be on your same network while you're testing. Run that. Hopefully. Let's reload. So it's still building in my Expo terminal. You'll see a lot of cryptic text. Well, so it's building. Still building. So this takes a little time. And it's building on my phone as well. So if he doesn't want to see it, I'll hold it up to the camera. And hopefully, let's try to run Mirror again. Let's run Mirror. Hopefully this, okay, so it's still opening in the web browser. Okay. And we've got an error. All right. So something's wrong. Okay, let's change our state. So I'm going to define constructor. Oh, super with props. And let's change this to this dot state. And I'll erase it. Hopefully. All right, something's still breaking. So move the semicolons. Save that. Okay, so essentially, okay, this is not going to run, but so we've got this button that clears input, right? Now we also want to add input. So the way we did this in web was we used this input tag. And I alluded to this solution earlier, but how do we take input in React Native? Would anyone like to take a wild guess if you remember? Oh,
We need to import, right?
yeah, so we imported the module.
Yeah.
Oh, 1 second. Ah, okay, so I just missed in a closing tag. So there's, okay, so we imported a module, and if you can look at my code here, what module would you think we imported in React Native that will help us take user input?
This is for text field, right?
Yeah, this is for text field.
Uh, I think we must have some. I don't know what exactly the import model name is, but it should be something like input or edit field.
Yeah, it's close. You said input, that's close. So the nuance is it's text input.
Okay, text input. Yeah.
Oh, there we go. So we have our app. So we have our app here. So you can see we've got alpha position finder, we've got the text, and we've got this clear input button that does nothing. So let's see how to add input to this. Okay. So right before this button, I'm just going to say text input, and I'm going to give it a placeholder. Just call this and alphabet, let's say on change. So here it's actually on change text and not on change in the text input component. So, you have, instead of on change, you have on change text. And I'm just going to say on change text will be this dot update input. And we cannot assign a key to this. So I'm going to make another button right below it. So I'm just going to say button title equals submit, accessibility label is also submit. And just for those who still didn't understand what accessibility label is, it essentially is, it basically makes sure it tells the web application or the mobile application what should the screen reader read. So if you guys might have seen me use something called TalkBack, which is a screen reader, it reads everything on the screen. It basically tells the mobile application if someone with a screen reader is using it, what should that screen reader read for this element?
So it may come with a hint and As far as I have read, I think Pranav we have for checkbox and other
We do.
options as well, right?
So for all touchable components, we
Yes.
do have accessibility labels. And in fact, even for something like views, we have accessibility labels. So you
Right.
can assign accessibility labels to a view, just like you can do it in web. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. Got it.
So on press, we'll just say this dot submit input. Okay. There we go. So we've got this button, right? And if I save, and if you look at the web application now, we've got our enter alphabet input field, and we've got a submit button that doesn't do anything, right? So we click on them. Even if I type a, it refreshed the page, but it didn't do anything. So it doesn't do anything. So how do we make this do something? If you remember from our React application, the code's actually quite simple. So we defined a function that says this.update input, right? So let's just go there and let's say update input equals, and just like the React application took something called event as its argument, this takes something called text. But in this case, text is essentially, it's not a whole object, it's just the text that the user has typed. So that's why on change text is pretty useful. So here we'll just say this, that's what, dot set state, and we have to change the input to, and let's define our clear input. So clear input equals nothing equals greater than this dot set state. Again, what would we set the state to here? So we change the input variable to the text that was entered. If you want to clear it, what would we enter? What would we set the state to? So it would just be empty string, right? Because that's essentially what empty input is. So I'll just say input an empty string. Okay. So clear input works. Let's actually test it. Hopefully. Oh, update input is not defined. Okay. All right. Oh, okay. That's out of the move a brace from there. Save that. This is why I don't like. All right. Let's test this. So I'm just going to say A, A, clear input. And it doesn't work. Why? Test that again. Clear input again. Doesn't work. Well, we're going to come back to this bug. This was an intentional bug, actually. But we're going to come back to it. So let's write our final function. That's submit. What was it? Submit input. Okay. Submit input. I'm going to open up brace, and I'm going to say for, oops, let I equals 0, I less than this dot state dot alphabets dot length f plus plus, And I'm just going to say if, just like our previous code, if alphabets I equals, so triple input, triple equal to from JavaScript. And I'm just going to say this state dot input, and actually that's this dot state dot. So we're just going to print an alert. So alert I plus one. All right. So if it goes 1, 2, how many more places? I think just one more. Oh, whoops. So I keep making this error, but hopefully. All right, so I'm just going to say F. And there we go. So we've got our alphabet. And let's just say F. And it works. Let's try a clear input again. It doesn't work, right? I keep spamming it. The clear input doesn't work. Why? Well, does anyone, before I actually say it, does anyone here, can anyone guess why clear input doesn't work? Would anyone want to take a quick guess? This worked in the web, right?
So is it an input or button?
It's a button. Clear input is a button that is supposed to clear the input when it's pressed.
Okay.
All right. So for this, I've written this code before. So this is not completely live, but to test it out, I wrote this code. So let's open up app.js in IO folder that I've created for this. So let's look at the clear input function here. Oh. So you may say this is fine, but this actually does not work in web. So if you were to try this application on your phone, clear input would work. Okay. So it's the nuance of Expo where not everything works in the web, unfortunately. So let's actually make one more change. Let's just say here, this in if the alphabet is found, this set state, let's just say input will be an empty string. All right. Any questions so far about text input or how we implemented this whole thing? Go back to the code and the application so you can see it. All right. So let's move to the last thing about today, which is validation of input. So let's talk about how to validate this. Now, this is pretty bad, right? I mean, think about it. Anyone could just type anything in this input, right? How would I validate this input so that the user only types a letter? Would anyone like to give me any ideas? So this is essentially logic. Even if you've not programmed, how would you validate input. So recall that we are asking for one letter.
Yeah, Pranav, I have seen in HTML we have something like, let's say, input equals email or something like that. It does
Right.
recognize with at. So
Yeah.
here
So
we need to, uh,
right. So unfortunately, we don't have that in React, but that's a good thought process. So we'll have to implement something like that in our handle input function or update in submit input function.
yes. So
So
here
what do you think?
integer.
Yeah, so we can check the type, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Right. So let's start with that. Hopefully I don't mess up. So before our for, I'm just going to say if this dot, I'm going to test this code in a command window first. Oh, didn't want to go into Python. So we're going to first, I'm just going to show you a function really quick. This is called type of. So if I say type of 1, it'll tell me its number, right? If I say type of 5, string. Right. So let's check that. So we're going to copy number. So let's say if, now what are we going to check the type of? Which variable in our application? So where's our input stored?
For text.
Not exactly for text. It's somewhere in our state. Text is actually passed down to a function we created earlier.
Change something we had used it right
So yeah,
along
so
with.
it's called input, right? So we say if type of this dot state dot whoops dot was it input not equal to string, let's just alert. Let's alert. Whoops. The data entered is not a string. All right. So let's test that. Save it. Let's say 2332. Doesn't work. So it doesn't go through. That's because I forgot to close the close brace. Okay, there we go. Let's say 2. Oh, whoops. Doesn't work though. All right.
Pranav, if it is possible, uh,
Right?
can you, if it is possible, can you have comments along with those code, because the next
Yeah,
time
yeah.
we
I'll put
run.
in. Yeah, I'll be adding in comments when I upload the code.
Okay, yeah.
All right. So I forgot a parenthesis. So let's save that and run it again. So let's just say 2. Oh, let's just say 2. So type of is not defined. That's weird, right? Well, it could be, because it has to be like that. So it has to be a capital. So let's try it again. So let's just say 3. All right, so this doesn't work. So what we could do is write a whole array, because type of doesn't actually work in React Native. What we could do is we could have a whole array of numbers, but I'll leave you guys up to doing that. So we have one more thing that we have to check. So I'm going to clear that. All right. So we have one more error to check. Now we're looking for an alphabet, right? What does that mean? What should the length of the input be?
25.
Not exactly, because we're looking for one alphabet. We're not really looking for so many, right?
We are looking only till I, right?
No, we're asking the user for an alphabet, right? So that's what I mean.
Yep.
So the user enters an alphabet and we check which position it is in.
Correct. So
we're just asking for one character, right? We're not asking for anything more, right? So
got it. Yes, yes.
what we could do here is, I could say, if um, this dot state dot input
Correct. Greater
dot
than
length,
0.
yeah, it's greater than 1, or this, so we use 2 vertical bars dot input, this dot state dot input is less than 1, will alert saying, whoops, please enter only one alphabet. And to cause for performance issues, I'm just going to say return 0. Okay. Actually, that won't work. All right. So let's test this.
So we also have elif, right, in JavaScript
Yeah, we've
and
got
React.
else if. Yeah, we've got else if.
Else if and the other one elif as well. Elif.
No, we've not got elif in JavaScript.
Okay.
Oh, something is breaking. Let's reload that page. Oh God, I'm really bad at managing closing braces. So let's just say A. And right, that works. But say I just say Pranav, it won't work. It'll give me an error. All right, so we've got one error done, right? Now where our array only has lowercase letters. So one potential thing we could do is just ask for lowercase letters. But guess what? That's actually bad experience, right? That's bad user experience. What else could we do to fix that someone might enter an uppercase letter?
I think we have the reserved word itself, right? Upper, lower.
Yeah, we've got something called, there's a function in JavaScript called toLowerCase. It's pretty verbose, but if I go ahead, if I say this, in my if statement in the for loop that says if this dot state dot alphabets left bracket I right bracket triple equal to this dot state dot input, let's add a dot to lowercase. It's an empty function, and hopefully I didn't screw up. Oh, well, okay, I'm gonna reload the page. Oh, okay. Oh, I wrote it somewhere wrong. Okay. I messed up a bit, so I'm just gonna fix. Yeah. Okay. I think my mouse trackpad will point out somewhere. Hopefully. All right. So say I type capital F. It still works, right? It still checks. All right. So with that, this it was a huge mouthful. But does anyone have any questions based on the validation that we performed?
Pranav, did that lowercase work?
The lowercase did work. It does
Okay.
actually convert to lowercase.
Okay. Does it? What does it actually do? Does it convert or it doesn't allow user to?
No, it actually
Like,
converts the input into
okay.
lowercase.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
So that because having
Yes,
the
as
user
you
to
said,
only type lowercase letters,
correct. As you said, it is not a
yeah, it
good
wouldn't be
user.
very good user experience.
Correct. Yeah.
All right, so we still have one more thing we have to fix, right? What if the thing is not in the alphabet? How do we fix that? Well, does anyone have any ideas?
Uh, do you mean the symbols?
Yeah, or basically, what if whatever is entered is actually not an alphabet or not in the alphabet at all? So that would
Hmm.
actually include numbers, integers, so on and so forth.
Yep.
So one way we could do it is, I'm going to add to return in our first if statement that checks the length. I'm just going to say return -1. That's an error code. And in here, I'm just going to say return 0. That specifies a code. And outside, just outside my function, 1 second, I'm just going to say alert, whoops, the data entered is not in the alphabet. Right. So let's test this. Hopefully I didn't mess up again. So let's just say, let's say 2. And it worked. So it doesn't work, right? I mean, it does work because it doesn't let me enter it. It gives me an error. Now, our final thing is what if there's no input at all? What would you think? What could we do? So what we could do is we could give an error over here saying there's no input. But a better thing to do would be, let's go to our submit input, submit button. And over here, I'm just going to say disabled equals this.state.disabled. Okay. So we're going to add that value into the state. And I'm going to say disabled equals true. Okay. So what do you think this disabled flag is going to do? So essentially what this does is, you may have noticed that the button will be disabled at many times in some forms, or sometimes the button is grayed out. That's what we're doing here. So we're essentially disabling this button. And in our input, our update input function, let's change it to say, let's say disabled will be false, right? So let's save. Hopefully, I'm going to reload. Oh, all right. So something's breaking. Oh, this will be colon, not equal to, and disabled. Reload the page. All right, so we still have another bug. So let's go fix it. So we have another brace to add. And there we go. And you can see that this button is not working. So if I say B, and there we go, it's enabled and it works. So, woo, okay, quite a bit of code today, right? So what do you guys think about this? Do you have any questions about disabling or anything really, about text input, about how we went about creating this app, about essentially validating the input, about how do we check if the user has entered any right input, or if the user is really lazy or just really tinkery and annoying and enters something wrong? All right, so what do we feel about this? Am I going too fast, or is this space okay and you're able to understand and follow me?
Yes, there is always some kind of uncertainty till we go through the code, but that's fine because we don't have any other option to
I
see
mean,
it
yeah,
online.
that's true, honestly. Yeah.
Yeah.
See, there's nothing like reading code, because you have it in front of you, and you can easily understand it.
Yes.
But
So,
yeah,
but
that's what I'm trying actually. This whole domain switching problem, because GitHub Pages wasn't allowing me to upload the latest source code, actually took quite a bit of time. So
yeah,
because I had to find a reasonably good domain that worked properly.
no problem. Yeah, no problem.
Yeah. And in fact, now this is a server. So if you looked at the week one where I had asked you to submit this to do application, which is the project, You may have noticed that if you try to submit, it actually takes you to it opens up your email application. You have to click send.
Yep.
I'm trying to make sure that that doesn't happen from next time.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah. Anything else? Any questions? Do you guys? In fact, today we're ending early, partly because RCB is playing, and I'm from Bangalore, so hopefully that'll be a great game to watch. And apart from that, since we've actually just done one concept today, so it shouldn't be too intensive. So any other questions related to anything, to JavaScript from lecture 0, React Native from last lecture, or text input from today? All right. I will hold office hours during the week, and if you do have any questions, you can ask me right away at any time, in fact, on the group. I'm just gonna close a few things. Close that. Oh, close that. So we can close Expo. All right. So I will see you. That's it for today's lecture. I will see you next lecture. And yeah, hope you have a good week. With that, I'll see you next time. Bye, guys. I'm just gonna stop stream.